today's video you join me on the ground at Abbots Bromley Farm Strip, just a few miles to the west of Takeoff and Airfield. We're getting ready for our flight back to Sleap, where we're going to fly in an anti-clockwise direction around the Shawbury Military Aerodrome traffic zone, and on the way back we're going to pay particular attention to Hixon Disused Airfield, Sandon Hall Estate, Stone and Trentham Gardens. For those of you who watched the previous video, you'll have noticed that we've just eaten in the Cobwebs Cafe, where we've had a great pizza lunch, but now it's time to head back to Sleap. It's early afternoon, but it is winter, and we're going to get that low level sun on our way back. We're backtracking the active runway 22. There's one single grass strip here at Abbots Bromley, runway 22 and the reciprocal of 04, marked at some 660 metres in length on the chart, which is more than adequate for us here in the autogyro. The chart does say that there's a gradual dip of about 3 metres in the middle of the runway, which you can just about notice when you take off. Doesn't affect us, we get airborne just before we reach that point. There's no landing fee here at Abbots Bromley. The owner, a very nice gentleman, I've met him a couple of times. He takes donations to the air ambulance, which I'd encourage all visiting pilots to contribute towards. Notice whilst visiting a number of farm strips that it's become relatively common that there's no set landing fee, but the donations towards charities are a common theme. As I taxi down the edge of the runway, you'll see that the runway edge is not massively obvious. It's more so where it's smooth versus where the crop line begins. And turning onto runway track now, the turning circle of the MT-03 is not the best, but with the width of this runway, it's just enough to position us right in the middle of runway 22, ready for takeoff. Having completed all our pre-takeoff checks, we're in the process of spinning that rotor up for takeoff, and we can see the rotor RPM gauge is building. A stick comes back, full power is applied, and then we start quite quickly moving across the ground, building up speed. We can see we've got that low level sun directly ahead of us out to the west. Just about to get unstuck from the runway and fly parallel to it, just as the ground goes down into that dip that was mentioned in the Poolie's guide that's in the middle of the runway. We've got somebody out to the left that waves to us, so we give them a wave as we head off into the climb. And we're presented with the beautiful view of Blithfield Reservoir on our climb out. Blithfield Reservoir took some 500 men over 6 years to complete and had its opening in 1953. The reservoir covers around about 800 acres of land. It holds around 4 billion gallons of water, feeding up to 100 million litres of water each day into around about 500,000 local households. Got land out options. We've got the land out to the right of us, and then as we get a bit closer we've got the land on the far side of the reservoir as options should we lose our engine. And by flying down the middle of the reservoir gives us land out options both to the left of us and to the right of us, as opposed to flying over the land and having the water to the side of us, which would then force land options directly beneath us. A late afternoon, late evening flight not long before sunset's always one of my favourite times to fly. Not only are the conditions more calm, but also the low sun casts some beautiful shadows across the ground. We're setting our course for Hixon Disused Airfield, which is not too far away. We're now approaching Hixon Disused Airfield, and I want to share a little bit of history with you. RAF Hixon was opened in 1942 and it was the base for number 30 Operational Training Unit. After the OTU left, until the unit closed in 1957, it was a satellite for number 16 Maintenance Unit of RAF Stafford just down the road. Initial plans were for operational flying to take place from Hixon. These were changed into a training base for bomber aircrew flying Wellington bombers. The airfield had 3 concrete runways, of which, as we see now, we can see 2 of the obvious runways, and the one is a bit more hidden as it's become more overgrown. RAF Hixon had accommodation for 2,900 service personnel. A number of the World War II airfield structures can still be seen today, in particular that of the air traffic control tower that's coming up on the left hand side. RAF Seiford was opened as a satellite and a relief landing ground for RAF Hixon, a number 30 operational training unit, when the other local airfield RAF Wheaton Aston became too busy and ceased being the Hixon standby airfield. Hixon was often visited by United States Air Force aircraft that were based not too far away in Stone. As 30 operational training unit moved out of Hixon, Beaufort's moved in, although they weren't at Hixon long as their unit disbanded in 1945. Hixon was handed over to 16 maintenance units from RAF Stafford as a subsite, helping to store end-of-war surplus stocks and vehicles. The site was disposed of by sale in 1962, and now, as far as I'm aware, no flying takes place from Hixon, and is primarily an industrial estate. There's still some connection, or there has been some connection to aviation, as I've previously been to the site and flown over the site and seen the likes of C-130 aircraft and various military aircraft that are in states of disbandment. I think there's some businesses that are based there that relate to selling on ex-MOD stock. With Hixon behind us, we're now approaching Weston. So here is the village of Weston just to the left of us. We've got the main West Coast main line for the railway just parallel to the left of us. We've got the River Trent down here, and also the Trent and Mersey Canal. On the nose we have the Sandon Park and Sandon Hall. Approaching Sandon Hall now, just here to the right of us. The Sandon Hall is a stately home surrounded by 400 acres of countryside. It sits within the Sandon estate, that's an estate of 5,000 acres in Staffordshire that hosts gun shoots, which backdates to its original history of it being a shooting lodge. The house itself is an ancestral home of Earl of Harrowby since 1776, when Nathaniel the first Baron Harrowby brought a shooting lodge and had it transformed into a Georgian house by Samuel Wyatt. In 1848 the hall was badly damaged, as quite often is the case, by fire, so much so that it had to be rebuilt. The architect William Byrne designed this existing neo-Jacobean style house, completing it in 1854. The history of the Harrowbys is that the first Earl of Harrowby was the Foreign Secretary of the country back in 1804, with the second and third Earls holding cabinet posts and served as MPs of Liverpool. The fifth Earl was the MP of Gravesend, and the sixth Earl MP of Shrewsbury. The family's also got connections to the banking industry, and the hall today is still a family home. Sandon Hall acts as a wedding and private corporate event venue hire, and within the grounds you'll find Temple Gardens and a Rose Amphitheatre. Standing close to the highest point of Sandon Park is this Italianate tower called the Trentham Tower, It originally formed the top of the tower of the Trentham Hall, and it was built by design of Sir Charles Barry in around 1840. Trentham Hall was demolished back in 1910 to 1912, and the tower was dismantled and reconstructed at Sandon at a cost of £192.07. The tower was fully restored in 2016. We now leave the Sandon Park estate and start heading off towards our next reference of stone. To the left of us we've got the A34, and then just off the nose we've got Stone, which has developed a substantial car park, which I've never noticed before, and I only bring it up in the video because of just how much of an eyesore it is, and couldn't quite get over how big of a car park it actually was, and I didn't understand or didn't know what it was there for. It's only having come home and looking into it that I found that this is a £40 million Land Rover storage depot. The space for over 6,000 vehicles, covering a size of 55 acres. The compound is equivalent to around about 35 football pitches. Understandably, there was some local objection, and they described it quite understandably as a colossal car park. But it passed planning, and here we have a Land Rover storage depot in Stone. Flying over the M6 now, we're just going to come to the east of it, hit the motorway down the left hand side whilst we maintain a northerly track, maintaining rules of the air. So the service station there to the left you can see, but also keeping to the east, it will mean that we stay clear of the military training camp of Swinnerton, which has a danger area, Delta 211, which gets activated by NOTAM that operates surface to 2,400 feet. We're just going to stay away from that area as we track north towards Trentham Gardens. Now on the edge of Stoke-on-Trent we come to Trentham Estate, where Trentham Hall was formerly one of England's grandest country houses. It was rebuilt for the Duke of Sutherland in an Italian style by the architect Charles Barry, who was best known for rebuilding the Houses of Parliament. Trentham Hall went from being one of the greatest houses in the country to being abandoned. This wasn't due to the common theme of fire or death taxes, but in this circumstance it was due to Stoke-on-Trent sewage polluting the River Trent. The pollution made life in the house impossible and caused its abandonment. No buyers were found for the estate, and the hall couldn't even be given away. The majority of the hall was pulled down in the year 1912, and as we earlier learnt, certain structures such as the Tower of Trentham were relocated some 11 miles down the road to the Sandon estate that we've just flown over. The Hall Gardens have been restored and are now a popular tourist attraction. What's left of the hall itself is now in a state of disrepair. Thank you for joining us on this flight. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, feel free to give it a like, drop me a comment, and I hope you join me on the next video.